Good morning. We're continuing learning about the laws of the 9 days, and we've been talking about not eating meat during the 9 days. The custom is not to eat meat or drink wine during the 9 days. In the temple, meat was brought as sacrifices, animals were brought as sacrifices, and wine was brought on the altar as wine libations, and we don't have that anymore, so we mourn by not eating meat and drinking wine. Okay, so we're on Taf Kuf Nun Aleph Yud 551:10. Yesh Misha Aimer. There are those that say, Shanogim Shalula Echel Basar B'Yamim Haniskarm Mutarim B'Tavshil Shnitzbashel B'Basar. Some say that those that have the custom to not eat meat during the 9 days, they're allowed to eat a Tavshil Shel Basar. A Tavshil Shel Basar means something which is par but was cooked with meat. So like a potato in your cholent. So there are some that say that if you have this potato in your cholent, you are allowed to eat it because it's technically not meat. And it is prohibited to eat chicken, to eat salted meat, and wine, yain toses, wine which is toses, which we'll see what that is. One is allowed to drink the wine of Havdalah, and for benching. The custom is to not drink wine for benching and or for Havdalah. Elanosnim latinok, rather give it to a child. And where there's no child, you can drink the Havdalah wine yourself. We'll talk more about that soon. Mitzvah, a mitzvah meal, kagon mila upidyon ben, like a bris or a redemption of the firstborn, v'siyum maseches, or somebody who finishes a masechta makes a siyum, su'udas erison, and an erison meal, which is the first stage of marriage. The Mishnah Berurah is going to talk about that. Ochlim basar v'shosim yain. And those festive meals during the 9 days, you could eat meat and drink wine. Kol shaykh masuda, whoever is shaykh to the suda, whoever is invited to the meal. Aval yesh l'tzamtzem shel lahosav. But you shouldn't have like a ton of people at the meal. Mishnah Berurah will discuss what that is. Ubeshvua shechal Tisha B'Av b'socho ein lachal basar l'shos yain rak minyan mitzumtzum. But the week that Tisha B'Av falls in, that you should only have the minimum 10 people that you need at the festive meal. Like you shouldn't invite the whole town so everyone could have meat during the 9 days. Even the day before Tisha B'Av is allowed. And as long as it's not the Suda Hamafsekas, the final meal that you eat before Tisha B'Av. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Mutar b'tavshil, avol shuman shel basar dino kebasar atzmo. But the fat of meat. So this was according to the opinion that says you could have a tavshil shel basar, a potato which was cooked in a meat dish with meat. So even according to them that you could have that, you're not allowed to have the fat of meat because that's really like meat. V'asur la'echol tavshil sheyesh bo shuman. You're not allowed to have a meal. Right. The custom is now that we don't even eat a tavshil shel basar during the 9 days. So that potato that you want to take out of the meat cholent, you should not have that during the 9 days. And it's only prohibited tavshil shel basar. However, if something was just cooked in a meat pot, or you cooked your fish in a meat pot, or you cooked some potatoes in a meat pot, that you are totally allowed to eat during the 9 days. Venira. And it appears that, right, if you have meat, let's say you're making your par of a meal for the 9 days, and meat fell in, if you have 60 times the meat, then it's allowed. So in the end of the day, the custom is we don't have meat, we don't have the fat of meat, we don't have something that was cooked together with meat, but we are allowed to eat something which was cooked just in a meat pot. Okay, we don't eat chicken. Someone who doesn't eat dairy, so he's very limited in the options that he can have during the 9 days, he is allowed to eat chicken or salted meat. And a woman who's nursing and her milk isn't good if she doesn't eat meat, she's allowed to eat any type of meat she needs. Ubasar maluach, salted meat, afilu mizman rubo, demikol makom isba simcha k'tzas. So back in the day, they didn't have refrigerators, so the way they used to keep their meat for a long period of time was by salting it. So this salted meat, even if it was salted for a long time and it's very old, one is still not allowed to eat it because there's still an enjoyment and a happiness from eating that. So he said one should not even drink yain tosis, which yain tosis. But hainu toch gimel lejusaso. It's within 3 days of it being, stepped on and getting the juice out of the grapes. Shehu matok ve'en it's sweet ve'en chazak upasal gavin zbeach. This type of wine isn't so great. It's very sweet, and it's not strong, and it wasn't allowed to be brought on the altar. So even though it's not such a great wine, it's still prohibited during the 9 days. One is allowed to drink. We said that Havdalah you could drink, the Shulchan Aruch said, the Havdalah wine. However, the Ramah says that the custom is to be stringent, not to drink the wine for Havdalah. Since you could give it to a child to taste. Right, by Havdalah we give it to a kid to taste, but not for other Sudas mitzvahs you could just drink it yourself. You're allowed to drink wine if you're at a meal for a bris or a meal for Siyum. Don't drink wine for benching. Pashat dechol mari b'birkas hamazon dechol. This is talking about benching, right? If you want to bench, you see people, they bench on a kos. You bench when you make the birchas hamazon, you make the blessing on wine after. So that don't do it during the week, but during Shabbos that's totally fine, because Shabbos during the 9 days you can drink wine and yet have meat. So this Shabbos, which is the day before Tisha B'av, we could eat meat and drink wine. Elanostim latinok. So we said for Havdalah, you give the wine to a child. So what does it mean, a child? She'egia l'chinuch means he's old enough that he or she is old enough to teach. They're at the age where you can teach them things about Judaism. They're not just like, it's not like a 2-year-old. Vishtarov a kos, and they should drink most of the cup. V'davki im lo hegia dayin lis'abel al Yushalayim. However, he has to be young enough that he's not old enough to understand to mourn on the temple. So you have to give it to a kid. It's a very specific age here, and it's very hard to define exactly what age this is. A kid who's old enough that you could teach him about the Torah, but he's young enough that he's not yet mature enough to mourn over the destruction of the temple. So I heard in the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein that you could drink wine for Havdalah, you yourself, that you don't have to rely on this. And I think there are some people that drink beer, but if you need to drink, I heard in the name of Rav Moshe Feinstein that you could drink the wine yourself. As it's very difficult to find this type of kid who is old enough that he is, you could teach him about Judaism, but he's young enough that he's not yet mourning about the destruction. And only this, which is a mitzvah, below mitzvah, only if it's a mitzvah, but a kid shouldn't eat meat and drink wine if it's not for a mitzvah like Havdalah, like this. Okay, lishtos Havdalah, avol birkas hamazon yivarech below kos. You should just bench without a cup of wine. Kevin diyesh poskim da'af shlosha she'achlu ein tzrichim kos al kapanim v'chi agavna yesh lismach alayu. Because there are those that hold that you don't need to bench on a kos even with 3 people. Ubesu this mitzvah. Ubezeh fila kosher berachos hamazon yesh lahato lishtos logar miyayin shebetoch hasuda dehuter. If you're benching, if you're having a festive meal for a bris and you're benching on a cup, you could drink wine then. If you make a siyum, you could have meat and drink wine. But he says you shouldn't schedule your siyum specifically for the 9 days. Some people do this. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't hurry up to finish specifically during the 9 days, and you shouldn't slow down to finish during the 9 days. Who's not invited because you can't just have everyone at your siyum. It has to be someone who's invited because you're friends or whatever it is. It's a sin. It's a sin to go just to a siyum meal that you have no relevance to, just to eat and drink there. Rak minyan mitzumtzum. And levad hakrayvim hapsulim leedus and levad habale mitzvah mutter lehosif asar mishum reyos v'ashar ochlim ma'achal chalov. This is talking about the week that Tisha B'av falls out on. So he says you should limit the amount of people. So again, this year we don't have a week that Tisha B'av falls on because it's on Sunday. So he says that besides for your family members that are pasal edus, because of their relation to you, you're allowed to have up to 10 people, and everyone else has to eat dairy. The Lavush writes from the beginning of the 9 days you should only have 10 people at the meal. Some take 10 besides the relatives. However, the Derech Chaim says you could be lenient like the Ramah. The Merosh Chodesh ad Hashavua shechal bo Tisha B'av mutar l'zamin kol hasheichim l'suda b'afilu kama minyanim. So he says that until the week of Tisha B'av, from the 9 days, you can invite however many friends and family you want to your festive meal. But the week of Tisha B'av, you should really only have 10 people, besides for the family members. If the bris or the Siyum falls on Tisha B'av, which happens to be on Shabbos, you can invite anyone you want. But Erev Tisha B'av Shari, on the eve of Tisha B'av, it's allowed. But you have to do it before midday. This is about making a Siyum on Erev Tisha B'av. Fine, and with that we finished today's halacha. So there was a lot here today. So one is allowed to eat meat during the 9 days for a festive meal, for a Siyum, but you shouldn't plan your Siyum for the 9 days. And we said for Havdalah, at the end of the day, we said in the name of Moshe Feinstein that you can actually drink the wine, or you could give it to a kid who's old enough to learn about Judaism, but he's not old enough to mourn over the destruction of the temple. And we learned also that we don't eat chicken during this time, but someone who's sick could eat chicken. And we also said that while we don't eat an item which was cooked in the same pot as meat, we can eat something which was just cooked in a meat pot. So a lot of halachas there. If any questions, please feel free to reach out, give me a call, and wishing everyone a beautiful day.